This is a short video for History 100 Perspectives in History undergraduate class. Hello class, welcome to this short video on how to insert sources into your first project. So as you look at the first project worksheet and template here, you will note you have your project options, your fourth choice here if you've contacted me to approve of something. Here, right, basically just a short paragraph on what you know about the topic or what you want to know about the topic. Generate a few questions, but the main point and purpose of this video is about sources and source insertion here. So, one thing I would like to see in this first project is citations, full citations for sources. Now, links are okay, but here's the problem with links. Sometimes links do not work, and if a link does not work, I don't know what source you have. So we are going to start practicing some citations. Now, citations at this point in the course do not need to be perfected. I just need to know exactly the name of the source. And so what we're going to do here is kind of cover two things. We're going to cover inserting sources and citations, as well as separating primary and secondary sources from one another. So let's hop into our library guide here. So right here you should see our History 100 library guide. Now you can find this in the table of contents on the History 100 page on Brightspace. Now as you look at this, depending upon your topic, you are going to get some starter sources for us. Now before we dive into starter sources, let's talk about the difference between a primary and a secondary source. A secondary source is always written by a historian about an event. I'll run that by you again. A secondary source is always written by a historian about an event. The easiest way to check a secondary source, and if you're confused on whether or not a source is secondary or primary, look at the date of publication. So if we know the drafting of the Constitution took place in roughly the 1700s, if we see a source from 2009, 99.99999% of the time that is going to be a secondary source. The very, very few times you might see that date misaligned is a reprinting of a primary source. But for the vast majority of a source that you see with the date after the event, it will be a secondary source as it is written about the event. A primary source, on the other hand, is a piece of evidence directly from the event. So let me run that by you again. A primary source is a piece of evidence directly from the event. And you can kind of use my strategy here to determine secondary and primary sources. Look at the date. If it's from 1780, it's more than likely a primary source. Now, our library guide here has some good starter sources to help you out. And the whole point and purpose of this first project here is to kind of get our feet wet and start exploring primary and secondary sources to interpret history. So if we click on this thing that says primary sources, and we scroll down, here we can see one primary source, George Washington, 1786, a letter to John Jay, 1786. So if we think about our little strategy here, look at the dates. This is from the 1700s. This is going to be a primary source. Now, what's great about our library guide here is if you want to use this primary source, you already have it cited. This is the exact citation. So what you would do, the old copy paste, come into here, insert that, come back here, open up our whole link, copy the link, and insert the link. This way I have both. I have a proper APA citation, because one's already generated for us, and I have a link. Now that is how to insert a primary source. Now I'm going to show you guys a really cool trick about finding secondary sources with perhaps one of my favorite websites, JSTOR. Now in my other video, I've showed you guys how to use JSTOR, and JSTOR here is a great place to find secondary sources. Now you will not find primary sources too much on JSTOR. Now it says primary sources here, but it's a little harder to find that. JSTOR has a lot more secondary sources. So if I were you, I would use JSTOR for secondary sources, mostly. So if we type in just a general search term, and this is what I like about JSTOR, it works very similar to Google, we can find sources. So let's say maybe we want to explore a little bit about slavery and the making of the Constitution, as what we know generally is slavery was codified and protected in the early forms of the Constitution prior to the Civil War. And so maybe we want to take a look at this source. So we can click on it. My internet's a little slow right now. Everybody must be on JSTOR. All right. And then we can read it. Now, here's the cool thing about JSTOR. You can download PDFs and save them. Now, here's the other awesome thing about JSTOR. And this is why I said in this video we're not going to focus on exact APA citations just yet, because we can click this button here. It generates it from us, and it has a link. So we copy. We come back to our topic exploration worksheet, and we insert it. And there we go. We have a secondary source and a primary source, and both of these are of very high quality. Notice how we used our library guide to find a quality primary source and how we found a quality academic source through JSTOR. I hope this video was helpful to you guys to work on our first project here and clarify a few points. So as you are assembling this project, please make sure to have the full citation. Okay, it doesn't have to be 100% correct, but I just need to see a name and author. And hopefully my little trick to show you the difference between a primary and secondary source helps out. If you have any questions, please let me know.